Welcome to PoliticKIng. I'm Larry King. Grover Norquist, he's the president of Americans for Tax Reform. I don't think he needs any introduction. He serves on the board of directors of the NRA, the American Conservative Union, the Parental Rights Organization. He's got a brand new book out entitled End the IRS Before It Ends Us: How to Restore a Low-Tax, High-Growth, Wealthy America. He joins us from New York. Good to see you again, Grover. Been too long between visits.
Absolutely, Larry. Good to see you.
All right, let's get right into it. I'm anxious to read this book. You are on the board of directors of the NRA, and last month, the talk show host Glenn Beck threatened to leave the NRA because he believes you're a dangerous man who has ties to people who've been affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. Where did that come from?
From a gentleman who made up that story about 10 years ago. It's unfortunately gets recycled every once in a while. It's a sad individual who's mad that he can't get employment by the federal government, and it pops up from time to time. It's like a bad rash.
Did you clear that up with Mr. Beck?
Not with Beck yet, but with the rest of the world.
Let's go back a little, Grover. Do you totally disagree with the graduated income tax?
I think we should go to a flat tax, a single rate tax. That's what we have in Massachusetts, my home state, very progressive Democrat blue state. By Constitution, there's only one rate in the tax code. And that means that when the politicians want to raise your taxes, they have to look everybody in the eye and say, I'm going to raise everybody's taxes.
That's Tax Freedom Day? What's Tax Freedom Day? April 24th,
this year,
right?
April 24th. On average, everything we collectively as Americans earn up until April 24th, all of January, February, March, almost all of April, almost 4 months of our income goes to government, and then we can start earning for ourselves. That's too late in the year. We need to get the tax burden down.
Doesn't a flat tax hurt the poor more?
No, what the flat tax does, it protects everybody. When politicians say they're going to tax the rich, they haven't finished the sentence. The sentence runs, I'm going to tax the rich first, and then you. When Clinton was president, he raised taxes on higher income people, and then he raised taxes on gasoline, which hit everybody. Obama has 7 taxes on the middle class in Obamacare. When politicians want to raise money, they have to go after the middle class. At the end of the day, that's where most of the money is.
How did all this start with you? When did you get into this tax issue? When I think of Grover Norquist, I think of tax.
I was head of the National Taxpayers Union right out of college. I got in a van and came down here and was associate director and a month later executive director of the National Taxpayers Union, which at the time was the only national taxpayer group. Proposition 13 happened in June of 1978, and I've been active in the taxpayer movement ever since. President Reagan put together Americans for Tax Reform and then asked me to run it. So that's what I've been doing since 1985.
Have you ever refused to pay tax? Have you ever not sent in a tax form every year?
No. That's a foolish way to object to higher taxes. The government's very serious about that sort of thing. The goal isn't to cut taxes for one person. It's to reduce the tax burden for all Americans, and you can only do that by changing the law.
Now, take me into the book. End the IRS. You want to end the IRS.
Our goal is to reduce the size and scope of government, certainly to end the IRS as we know it, as something that intrusive that when you die, they want to know how much gold is in your teeth and what's in your basement because they're going to take a chunk of it, where they have to know every bank account you have. The way we structure the income tax today is much too intrusive. We lose our privacy. If we go to a single rate tax that taxes income one time at one rate, that would reduce an awful lot of what the IRS agents do today.
Are you, do you think this can happen logically in the way this Congress is set up and the muddle we're in?
Okay, not with the muddle we're in right now, but in the next 4, 5, 6 years, yes. You're quite right that right now we have a president with a veto, and the Republicans have the House and the Senate. So if Obama wants to do something, the Republicans in Congress don't have to pass it. If the Republicans pass a law, Obama can veto it. So it's like you had two sumo wrestlers that were exactly the same size bumping into each other for the next 2 years. Nobody gets knocked out of the ring. But if we elect a Republican president to go with the House and Senate, then you could pass the Ryan budget plan, which would dramatically reform entitlements and drop the cost of government in half over the next 25 years from what it's scheduled to be. It's a big deal, big reform.
Do you believe that government has to help the less fortunate? I mean, we have to have taxes, right? It can't
We do
exist.
need to have taxes. There's some very important things the government does. It's important to have a military that's serious and strong and keeps the Canadians on their side of the border. We need to have a judicial system so that people who steal your stuff or want to steal your stuff don't. But when the government gets away from protecting your liberties and your life, it can often become abusive and destructive of liberty. At some point, the Roman Empire stopped helping the Romans and started being something that made the emperor rich.
The people who are born less fortunate than others, or people into tragedy in this country of slavery, which led to racism. I mean, it took a while. You needed the government to step in. You needed to say you have to serve these people, that they deserve a level playing field. And who else does that but the government?
Well, nobody except the government invented and defended slavery. It was the Fugitive Slave Act passed by the government that made slavery possible. So the government, when it ended slavery, was ending the government's sin of allowing and protecting slavery. So let's remember to give the government credit for when it does bad things as well as it stops doing bad things. What we need to do is have more opportunities for more Americans. Right now, a lot of what the government does makes it difficult for people. I do some work with a group called Right on Crime, which is an effort to rethink mass incarceration, to rethink how many people need to be in prison, how can we protect people from crime and from criminals, how can we punish criminals, but do you really need to have as many people in jail for as long as we do right now? And I think the answer to that is no. We need to be able to have jobs when people get out. Back in the 1950s, only 5% of Americans had jobs that required a license, like a lawyer or a doctor. Today, about a third of all jobs in America require a license, like a taxi driver or somebody who braids your hair. A lot of those licenses are really make work, or they keep people out of new opportunities. Young people can't start a career because they haven't gotten the license. Felons who have been let out of prison often can't get a job as a barber because they have a law against felons becoming barbers. I'd rather give people a second chance and get them working and reduce some of that licensing, which keeps people away from jobs.
Also, why should people be in jail for drug use?
Well, there's a real question. We want people in jail who have done great harm and who we're scared of if they were outside. We tend to put people in prison that we're mad at. And there are drug courts and other ways to signal society's disapproval without spending in California $50,000 a year to keep someone in prison. Or I was just up in Wisconsin, $41,000 a year to keep someone inside a jail, a prison in Wisconsin. Are you really getting taxpayers' dollars worth?
All right, April 15th is upon us. Your book includes a chapter on do-it-yourself tax reform. You list 12 ways people can cut their own taxes.
Yeah.
Give me a few examples.
First of all, don't overpay. When you get all excited that you're going to get a refund after April 15th, what that really meant is you overpaid and you gave the federal government an interest-free loan. Give your brother-in-law an interest-free loan. Don't give the government an interest-free loan. 529s, if you have children or grandchildren that you would like to help with their education, set up a 529 education account. It's an education savings account. It builds up tax-free. It's a way to give more to your children or grandchildren. Health savings accounts. See whether that's available at work or if you're self-employed. Health savings accounts are a way for you to save tax-free for your health needs in the future. If your company has a 401k, or you could have the opportunity of an IRA. Do some savings through IRAs, 401ks, Roth IRAs. Saves you a lot of money, and it keeps the tax collector away from your money for years and years.
Are you angry at loopholes, corporations that don't pay taxes?
I think every time we find loopholes that are set up for one particular industry, we should strip those out and reduce tax rates for everybody. There's a wonderful bill that Pompeo, congressman from Kansas, has put forward. It would eliminate all of the targeted tax credits and deductions for the energy industry and cut the business tax rate across the board. So it'd get rid of every single one of those loopholes, deductions, and credits that are targeted to the energy industry and cut the overall rate. That's the kind of reform we need.
On the cover of your new book, it asserts that people live in fear of making a mistake and being audited. Given that the IRS only audits less than 0.9% of individual returns, is that a mistaken fear?
Well, it's a little more likely than getting hit by lightning and a little more terrifying. People really do tell you they'd rather go to the dentist than be audited. There's a great fear. The government can be very intrusive. We know that businesses have had the government seize their money because they thought that maybe they were putting too much money in cash in a bank, and then they took the cash. And it can take a lot of money and lawyers to get your money, not money you owe the government, money that the government decides it wants to look at, and it wants to look at it while it holds it. Asset forfeiture is a real violation of people's liberties, and the IRS needs to knock it off.
But how else do they collect if they don't collect the assets?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's not taxes. That's when they think maybe you're breaking some rule of theirs, so they just take all the money in question, and you don't owe a penny. They just want to hold on to it while they think about it. It's a real problem.
It's not after you're convicted?
No. They do that too, but that's not quite the same problem. After a conviction, then the government can take the money that they're owed. It's when they don't have a conviction and they take the money that it becomes looks a little too much like some other country that we'd rather not be like.
Have you ever been audited?
No, I haven't. I've served on a congressional committee that oversaw the IRS. So I think at some point they decided not to bother me. Everyone thought I was being audited because I was talking about the damage done by some abusive audits. And I think people assumed that it was because I was aware of what was going on because I served on this congressional committee.
How were you on a congressional committee if you weren't in Congress?
I'm sorry, it's not a committee, a congressional commission. It's called a commission. Yeah.
You advocate for the government being limited to doing a few necessary things. You listed the military and others. You don't think health is a necessary thing? Health care?
I think we should take a look at how we can best give people the options and the most choices possible. I think the more the government steps back and gives people more choices, the better off we are, both in terms of school choice to homeschool or charter school or public school or private school, and with health care, letting people have the option of a health savings account is a tremendous opportunity to give people more control over their own health care. You don't have to get the government out completely, but it can do it with a lighter touch, less expensively, and let you be in charge. We want patient-centered health care, not government-centered health care. Government shouldn't be making these decisions. You should.
According to a 2015 report by the Joint Committee on Taxation, 99.8% of estates pay no estate taxes. Why are you so strong about eliminating the estate tax when it affects so few people?
One of the signs of how healthy America is that polls show that 70% of Americans want to abolish the death tax. There'll be a vote in Congress before April 15th of this year to abolish the death tax in the House and maybe in the Senate as well. People just understand that the death tax, the tax on what you have saved all your life, when you die.
Only 1.5% of the people have to pay that tax.
Right, but 70% think it should be abolished.
they're
meaning
wrong.
They think it's unfair. No, they think it's unfair for you to pay the death tax or their children to pay the death tax, or someday they may pay it. They recognize that the death tax is a tax on income that you've already paid taxes on several times. When you earned it, when you saved it, when you invested it, when you got a capital gains. And then when you die, the government can take as much as 40% again. So you mentioned earlier, what are the ways that you could help avoid paying too much in taxes? Move to a low-tax state like Florida or Texas, and 2, don't die.
But a lot of those 70% believe that it's going to affect them if their estate is $60,000.
Well, it was lower. It's now been increased. But that number has been a solid 70% for decades. I think people just understand that it's wrong to double and triple tax people's life savings. I think it's a sign of health for the country.
A month ago, a spokeswoman for Jeb Bush said that the potential presidential candidate will not sign your anti-tax pledge. Your anti-tax pledge. What do you make of that?
Well, his father, George Herbert Walker Bush, made that commitment in writing, and that's why he got elected president. That's why he won the primary. It's why he beat Dukakis. Then he broke that pledge, and he lost. Jeb's brother, George W. Bush, recognized the importance of the pledge, and he signed the pledge, made the commitment, and kept the commitment. George W. Bush never raised taxes, never allowed a tax increase to pass. I think Jeb will, at the end of the day, because all the other Republicans running for president have signed the pledge as governors, as senators, as congressmen, as candidates for president in the past. I think at the end of the day, he'll make it clear that he will not raise taxes for 2 reasons. 1, when he was governor, he cut taxes. He didn't raise taxes. And 2, there's going to be a Republican majority in the House and the Senate, and all of them, almost all of them, have signed the pledge never to raise taxes. So the next Republican president is never going to see a tax increase. He couldn't sign one if he wanted to.
Didn't George H.W. Bush say that he never should have said never say never? In the kind of world we live in, it's impossible to say that.
Well, he may have said that after he was elected, but if he hadn't made the commitment not to raise taxes, 1, he wouldn't have been elected. 2, when he raised taxes, the Democrats promised him $2 of spending reduction for every $1 of tax increase. And not only did spending not go down, it went up. George Herbert Walker Bush's tax increase was used to raise total spending, and it damaged the economy and put people out of work. He admitted it was a mistake to raise taxes at the time, and I think he was a very big man for doing that. Admitting it was a mistake.
Do you have a favorite among the possible Republican nominees?
Absolutely. 5 or 6 favorites.
They are?
Oh, Scott Walker, governor of Wisconsin. Rand Paul, who just announced that he's running for president. You've got Chris Christie, who's in New Jersey and has done incredible work given the Democratic legislature he has to be up against. Bobby Jindal in Louisiana. If this is an election about health care, Bobby Jindal is the expert there. Ted Cruz in Texas is a stalwart. And Jeb Bush was a very good governor back 12 years ago when he was governor of Florida.
What do you think of Marco Rubio?
Oh, I did not mean to leave Marco Rubio out. He is an extremely good speaker, an extremely serious spokesman for constitutional, limited government, and coming from Florida and being a Spanish speaker, those are both great assets in somebody running for president.
Grover, it's always good talking to you.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks for the opportunity.
The book, again, is End the IRS Before It Ends Us, How to Restore a Low-Tax, High-Growth, Wealthy America. Our guest, Grover Norquist.